You rock. I'm back. Sorry, guys. Sorry I was away so long. A lot going on in business, a lot going on in music business, and I'm busy doing a lot of stuff, and I've had a lot of technical difficulties and some stuff I just had to get taken care of. So I won't bore you with the details. Anyways, to my boys in the UK, I love you guys. Thank you so much for the questions and supporting me and buying pedals from me and hey, I just really appreciate it. So anyways, cheers to my boys in Britain and the UK and a couple of boys out in Australia. I love you. And to everybody else, thank you very much. Yummy. Salute to you boys. All right, so one of the biggest questions I had, and you know who you are, was does the Kemper amp sound as good as the JMP1? That's what I did for a week. So, answer your question. I don't have an answer. Well, maybe I have an answer. Guys, I struggled with that question. Now I can run the Kemper. I run a preamp. Any of you guys that don't know, I run a preamp into the front of the Kemper, from the Kemper into a BB Sonic Maximizer, and right up here to this Voodoo Labs. Excuse me, I'll say Voodoo Labs. Voodoo Amps modded 9200. Killer piece, and this is not the one I played recently with the Kemper. That was a regular Marshall, unmodded. This one's got mega cojones. I had one of these before and it got misplaced, let's say. As far as touch response goes, right? Not much that beats the JMP1. Touch response and just feel. One of the greatest pieces of gear, in my humble opinion, ever made. Know the guy who sketched it out. Without him, we probably wouldn't have that piece of gear. His name's Mike. I won't use his last name. But is now with a very good company on the internet. And I'll ask him if I can elaborate on that. He's given me some free product to try out, and I really such a great guy. So and without him, we wouldn't have this wonderful piece of gear. So God love him. He's I'm glad he's here. So, JMP is bad, and with this rig, it's even badder. This is some cheap gear, guys. If you're looking for a cheap killer rig, here it is. Let me tell you what it is. I'm going straight into the JMP1. JMP1 goes into a Alesis Quadraverb. Pick up my reverb there, and I also use the EQ in it. It's got a parametric EQ in it that really gives it some bottom end. I go from there into a Rocktron Intelliflex, and from the Rocktron Intelliflex, an old blackface Intelliflex, just a $100 piece of gear. Did both of those like $100 pieces of gear, $100 and $100. Into the BB Sonic Maximizer. I found Sonic Maximizers on Craigslist for $25, $50, $100, $300. And I found these. I bought this one super cheap. I won't tell you. I mean, it's super cheap. This 9200, and I picked up the JMPs for as low as $200 to $300. Here is a stomping piece of gear that I guarantee you, with a little effort, you could put on under $1,000, maybe $1,200, $1,500, depending on if you're in another country or whatever. But in my local area, I've been able to build a couple of these rigs for fairly cheap. Now I've done mods to them and other things that have upped the what they cost, but you could build this, because I'm all about trying to get guys tone who, a lot of us don't have a bunch of dough laying around. So there's a piece of gear. If anybody's got any questions, give me a call. But anyways, let's go back to the question of, does the Kemper amp sound as good as the JMP1? That is a toughie. And the reason why is the Kemper amp is very, very versatile. All your effects are there. Your cabinets, if you're using it through a PA, which I don't really care for, it doesn't sound like an amp to me through a PA. It's good, but it's not an amp. But there's just something about playing a tube amp. I mean, we all know it. Everybody wants to go, oh, this little box will do everything, and it's great. Now, here's one thing I've learned about the Kemper amp, and I have a lot of experience with that little box. And I keep looking because I have two of them over here, and I'm doing some setup stuff for some other guys. But one of the things that I will tell you is, it is a recorded tone. And if you're playing through studio monitors, it sounds really, really, really good. If you're going through a huge, which I have done some testing on, I use like keyboard amps because they have like a tweeter and a sub, like a 15, but they're a full range speaker. So man, the bottom end you get out of them is unmatched. I've never heard anything with the bottom end like a Kemper amp through like a good keyboard with a keyboard amp with a 15 or an 18 in it. They're just absolutely amazing. But there's something about a tube amp. The other day I put this pedal through my Marshall Major, which I'll be doing some videos on. I have a 68 Marshall Major, and the tone is like, it's unbelievable. And it's because of the KT88s that are in that, the tubes that are in that. And But it's sorry, thing sounds killer. Um, but you know that something about playing through a tube amp, guys. It just the fire that comes out of those preamp tubes, and that preamp tubes, the way they load up the power amp tubes, and the interaction of the transformers and all that. You know, they're getting very close. There's some computer software, which I also am going to be doing some stuff with. I have used this because I'm using this with my effects coming right out of the speaker. And I'm using this microphone, the C414 in this room, so you can hear what it sounds like in my room. I'm not trying to mic up a cab yet or anything like that, because I want to give you a sense of what it sounds like in this room with this versus my Kemper, and let you guys kind of decide. And the Kemper sounds great. And on some of the patches on the Kemper, I go, wow, that sounds way better than the JMP1. Then I switch back over to the JMP1, and I'm like, yeah, but the touch response and the overall just interacting. Some of that, if you're listening through studio monitors, but I don't play through studio monitors, and I don't know too many guys are going to play a gig with studio monitors. So for me, I still love a tube amp. I'm not selling my tube amps yet, guys. But the Kemper, for a versatile piece of gear, like I set my Kemper on top of my 9200 and a cabinet, and I take it in the house. You got every piece, every amp you could ever think of, and it's real fun to play with. It's a killer piece of gear. But here in the short run, I'm going to do a video where I go through my JMP1 rig, and I will use the Alesis Quadraverb to do my, my EQ. But I'll turn all the other effects off. I might leave a tiny bit of reverb on it because it's really a neat effect. And then I go through my studio monitors through TH2 Overloud. If you want to know what that is, that's just guitar amp modeling software. It's really good. And if you look up Pixie Licks, he does tons of videos on that stuff. His name's Steve, a sweetheart, love of a guy, wonderful human being. I got to meet this year at NAMM. I've been watching him for years on YouTube. Great guy. But and I use the TH2 software because it does a killer job on clean tones, and it does a killer job, period. But it does a really killer job through my uprights here, and in a clean tone, and it gets all of my effects, and it's a one wire. So if I'm playing a gig, I can run one wire out to my box, and you can train TH2 individually to have several different stomp boxes and all kinds of neat stuff in there. There's videos on that, and it's become something I really like for like my effects and stuff, some ping pong effect or some crazy reverbs and stuff. And TH2 has a thing called Breverb that is whoo. And when you use a computer for your effects, you're not limited in just guitar effects. You can use other things. So I really like it. So I really struggled, guys, I want you to know. I'm going to give you a clean tone here on this JMP1. I really struggled with the questions of whether the Kemper was as good as the JMP1. They're just different tools, I think. But both killer tools, and there's just, it's a hard question to answer. I'm not trying to duck and dodge the question, because I wouldn't do that to you guys. I love you, but the thing sounds amazing. And no, the Kemper doesn't sound like that. Doesn't sound that full. It's a recording, guys. And if you've watched my other videos, you know I love Mr. Kemper. single coil up here. I've heard a lot of arguments on the JMP1 about it. Well, you know, it's not a true tube, this and that. Well, let me tell you something. You put a Telefunken tube in that second position back there, clean tone, and listen, it's a Fender. And a lot of guys are like, you know, a lot of guys want to argue about stuff. I'm not here to argue. Sounds killer. So to my boys in the UK, I hope that kind of answered your question. Does the Kemper amp sound as good as the JMP1? It's just tough, man. There's some patches in that thing, like I say, that are just glorious. And then I plug back into the JMP1 and I'm like, oh my God, that's why I love tube amps. I don't know if anything will ever pick up what's going on with the strings like a tube amp. So before long, I'm going to run this JMP1 through that Marshall Major and show you guys what it sounds like. And using the Marshall Major as a power amp from this, and I just use this for EQ, and then I run the TH2 Overloud computer software for these uprights, and then I use that for all my effects. Hello. It's pretty awesome. Anyways, I love you guys. Till we meet again, you rock. I love you. And to my boys in the UK, thank you. I love you guys. Till we meet again.